Terrible story out of Texas. This is a story that we've been tracking, I guess, for years at this point. The story of Jeffrey Younger. You've probably heard of it. Jeffrey Younger is this father who is trying to save his son from being castrated and transed by his lunatic ex-wife. Jeffrey Younger, he's in Texas. We've followed this story pretty closely, and the Texas Supreme Court has just ruled against Jeffrey Younger preventing the chemical castration of his son. So this means now that Younger's ex-wife can take their son to California to have him, quote unquote, medically transitioned. This mother is a complete Looney Tune, obviously doing very, very evil things. She's a pediatrician. Jeff Younger has accused this woman of using their children to help advertise her inclusive, gender-affirming practice. So surprise, surprise, this woman's job is to trans the kids, and she decides one day that her son is really a girl. And when their son first started saying this, Jeff Younger pulled out his phone. He said, I want to document this for the future when this becomes inevitably a legal matter. Son, why do you think you're a girl?
You're a boy, right?
No, I'm a girl.
Who told you you were a girl?
Mommy.
When did she tell you you were a girl?
Because I love girls.
Oh, I see. So mommy told you you were a girl?
Uh-huh.
Was divorced a few years ago. When my child hit his third birthday, and this happened during the divorce, hit his third birthday, he started telling me that he was a girl. Mm-hmm. And I immediately pulled out my video and videotaped him and asked him, why do you think you're a girl? Mm-hmm. You can see this video at SaveJames.com. It's the first time I heard about this.
Okay.
What happened was all of his authority figures, right? His mom, his sisters, his older sisters, his teacher, the policeman at school, the librarian, the principals, the lunch lady, all of his authority figures were telling him he was a girl, and I was the only one. And me and his priest were the only one telling him that he was a boy. And he really just didn't believe me.
Absolutely heartbreaking story. Your heart breaks for this dad, Jeff Younger. Your heart breaks, obviously, for the kid. It's difficult not to be filled with a righteous anger at this horrible mother who is castrating her kid. Everyone is viewing this as a story about transgenderism, the new gender ideology, or as a story about grooming, or sure, it's all of those things. Fundamentally, this is a story about divorce. When did all of this start to happen? When did the kid first say that he's a girl? When did the mother first start moving to mess up his genitals and his hormones? You heard Jeff Younger say it. It said it was during the divorce. Right during the divorce, coincidentally, the kid starts to go kind of crazy, or the mother drives the kid crazy. Many such cases, that's what happens. Why is the kid in this terrible state that he's in? Because Jeff Younger has no say over his kid's life, because they're divorced, and because our current divorce regime allows crazy mothers to leave whenever they want to. And again, I don't know the details of their divorce. Maybe he instigated, I don't know, but when divorce happens, the fathers have very little say in the raising of their kids. A lot of times conservatives, when we fight political battles, we just want to treat symptoms. We want to treat the immediate problem that we're looking at right now. And so in this case, it's so clear. You want to treat the transgenderism. We got to stop the transgenderism. We got to stop the grooming of kids. Yeah, that's the immediate problem. But the cause of that problem, the sickness that is driving it, especially in this case, is divorce, is the breakdown of the family, is the fact that even conservatives now will not acknowledge that men and women are different and they have different roles and they are complementary to one another. That's what marriage is. Marriage, as the bedrock political institution, is predicated on the fact that men and women are different and complementary to one another. But there are many so-called conservatives today who accept the absurd notion of gay marriage. And they do it because they have gay friends and they don't want to seem mean and they don't want to seem phobic. But put all of that aside. I don't think it's mean or phobic or anything like that to acknowledge that marriage can only have one meaning, which is the perpetual union of a man and a woman for the good of the spouses and the sake of the generation and education of children, if we are to accept that men and women are really different. The second we lose that, The second we stop defending marriage, the second, forget about the gay marriage redefinition thing for a second, the second that we grant no-fault divorce, the second that we grant that marriage is just, I don't know, a consensual temporary union of two people while they titillate one another, and then once the thrill is gone, they leave and move on, children be damned, family be damned. The second that we admit that, and many conservatives admit that, many conservatives have no problem with lax divorce laws. Many conservatives have no problem redefining marriage. Many conservatives have no problem with transgenderism. As long as you're 18, as long as you make the decision to chop off your genitals. Well, if we're going to grant that, then even the conservatives are not going to admit there's a difference between men and women. And then they're certainly not going to admit that there's a difference in the roles of men and women. They're certainly not going to admit that men have a leadership role. Husbands have a leadership role within the marriage to be the head of one's own household. And so the problem is just going to fester. And we can whine until we're blue in the face about transgenderism and the child abuse, but you're not going to address the root causes of it. So then what are we even talking about? It's a sad story, and there are going to be many, many more sad stories just like this if we don't get serious about what is allowing these things to happen. Okay, we should not be distracted by the crazy consequences of the political regime that we're living under. We got to get down to the problem. When did all this stuff start cropping up? Why did it start cropping up? It is a consequence of the sexual revolution. It's a consequence of the 1960s. And a lot of Republicans and conservatives are okay with that. It's why I can't really totally defend Andrew Tate, because Andrew Tate loves the sexual revolution. Andrew Tate has profited. He's made millions and millions of dollars off of the sexual revolution. Okay, I guess you can buy some more Bugattis, but you're not going to conserve anything of our traditional culture. You're not going to stand up for civilization if you're doing that. And frankly, the Republican establishment, the rhino, conservative, squishy establishment, we're basically all Andrew Tate in this situation. We've traded our patrimony and our civilization for some fancy Bugattis and some fun with loose women on the side. Not great stuff, okay? Not great stuff at all. The trans bathroom issue is almost certainly going to be headed to the Supreme Court. This is a story not a lot of people have talked about, but the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals just held up in a 7-4 decision that the St. Johns County School Board policy barring girls who identify as boys from using the high school boys' restroom does not violate the student's constitutional right to equal protection or Title IX, which is Title IX is the federal civil rights law that bars discrimination based on sex, which the Supreme Court has already said covers sexual orientation and gender identity. So they've already squished into the transgender camp on that. But the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals decision differs on the substance from a decision 2 years ago by the 4th Circuit, which struck down a similar policy in Virginia. So what that means is you've now got a disagreement among the circuits. And disagreement among the circuits is when you get a case to go up to the Supreme Court. So it seems very likely to me that the Supreme Court not only will be presented with this case, but will have to accept this case. And so that means that you will finally get a clear national decision on the transgender bathroom issue, which has been brewing now for 8 or 9 years? I mean, this has been going on since the Obama administration. You saw this first push to let boys into the girls' room, and then then there were laws in North Carolina to stop the boys from going to the girls' room. Then Obama couldn't handle that. He said, nope, we're going to dog nabbit. We're going to let those boys go into the girls' room. And so they made a federal policy. They used the Department of Education to try to force boys into the girls' room. You saw a big political battle for years about this. Now it could possibly be resolved. Some people are not going to be happy about that. You're going to have the extreme libertarian types say, well, the government should have no say over this. Come on, the government, we need to get big government out of our bathrooms. And if a school district wants boys to go into the girls' bathrooms, well, that's the school district's decision. And or the really extreme libertarians would say, use whatever bathroom you want, you're fully autonomous, do whatever you want with your own body. Then you're going to see people who are a little bit more conservative. They're going to say, well, I don't want boys in the girls' bathroom, but I don't want the federal government making this decision. I want it to be left to the states. You saw a similar argument with regard to abortion and marriage, by the way. There are some people who believe that we shouldn't ban abortion nationally. We should just leave it to the states. That's the kind of middle ground conservative libertarian position. Or with marriage. Well, we shouldn't have a national marriage definition. We should just leave it to the states. If Massachusetts wants to redefine marriage to effectively abolish what marriage is, that's their right to do so. And if Texas and Tennessee want to keep the traditional definition of marriage, well, that's their right to do so too. And I just don't think that works. I think on a lot of issues that does work. Okay, I totally support subsidiarity. I think federalism can be a wonderful thing. And on all sorts of issues, maybe some gun laws, maybe even drug laws in some cases, there's all sorts of cases in which the decision should be made at the most local level possible. But when we get down to really fundamental stuff, like what is a man, what is a woman, I don't think you can leave that up to the states. Antonin Scalia made this point, actually, on the question of gay marriage. He said, I don't think you can just leave it up to the states, because what happens then when a married couple of two men leave Massachusetts and they move to Tennessee? Is their marriage, quote unquote, going to be recognized or not? You need, on certain really basic things, you need to come to some conclusions if society is going to do anything at all. The principle of subsidiarity, the principle of federalism, is that you always want questions to be answered at the most local level possible. Well, you can't answer questions of what is a man, what is a woman, what is marriage, and really basic stuff at the county level, okay, or at the township level. Certain things really do have to be answered at the tippy top level. That's why we have a federal government. That's why we have a national capital. So I think we can win this battle. I do think the Supreme Court reads public opinion surveys. I think the Supreme Court follows the election returns. I think it's very, very clear that the vast majority of Americans oppose this transgender nonsense, especially as it pertains to kids. I think so. I don't know. Neil Gorsuch has been really kind of squishy on this issue, but I think we could do it. Republicans just need to cut out the you do you kind of claptrap, okay? Or on McIntyre, one of my favorite tweeters, has a line. He articulates a well-established principle, and he articulates it pretty clearly. He has said that the side that wants to win is always going to defeat the side that just wants to be left alone. Really important principle for politics. The side that wants to win is always going to defeat the side that just wants to be left alone. We should win this decision. It is absolutely unacceptable to let boys use the girls' bathroom, especially in high schools. The Daily Wire broke the story that probably threw Virginia to the Republicans in the election of Glenn Youngkin, which is that Loudoun County schools, because of their stupid bathroom policy, allowed boys to go into the girls' bathroom, and a girl was raped by a boy in the girls' bathroom, and then the superintendent of the school covered it up because it was clear that this policy enabled this kind of behavior, covered it up, moved the kid to another school. What happened? The kid did the same damn thing at the other school. This is unacceptable. It leads to terrible practical outcomes, and it is just anthropologically absurd that boys can really be girls and girls can really be boys. We need to just say no to this, and we need to stand firm on that, and we have to have the courage to wield the force of our political order to say no. Just say no. Other governments are doing it. Even the Swiss are doing it. Is there any nicer country than the Swiss? These guys are so go along to get along. They remain neutral in every single war. And the Swiss government has just rejected transgender ideology. The Swiss Federal Council just said, in response to two proposals from Parliament, quote, the binary gender model is still strongly anchored in Swiss society. The social preconditions for the introduction of a third gender or for a general waiver of the gender entry in the civil registry currently are not there. The government has to weigh in on certain things. If even the Swiss can do it, we should be able to do it too. France, for goodness sakes, the French. This was last summer, I think. Emmanuel Macron, leader of France, came out and he said, wokeism is an American export, and we don't want it. This wokeism, this political correctness. This is France. This is a pretty lib society. They say, but this woke thing, all this we don't do that here. That's foreign. That's something that the American society is exporting around the world. And I think he was right about that. The silver lining in the storm cloud of all this transgenderism is I think that it is reminding Republicans and conservatives who have gone real squishy and become real relativists in recent years, who have unfortunately accepted the worst premises of the Enlightenment and of the last 400 years in philosophical history to ultimately conclude that we really can't really know anything at all, and what is good and what is bad and what is true and what is false, and maybe one man's good is another man's bad, and you do you and we can't, all of this silly nonsense. What the transgender issue, I think, is showing Republicans is there are some absolutes. There are some things that we can know. It's not all just relativism, throw your hands up in the air, give everyone maximal individual autonomy, because we can't really conclude anything at all. On certain things we actually can know, okay? Like when you start chopping off kids' genitals, we know that's bad. And we can say it, and we can stand up for it, and we have to stand up for that. But we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of politics right now. That's on the member block. You do not want to miss it. If you are not a member, click the link in the description and join us.